the Palestinian desire to return.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. So, I guess you're just showing us little samples of this museum, and
Sure.
people should understand that it's we always said it's a small museum with a big story, and so part of people when they come to the museum, it's not just that they're going to be there looking at the artifacts, but it's meant to be a place of hospitality, isn't it? So if I was there looking at some of these exhibits, what would I experience as well as just reading them on the wall? No?
Well, we actually strive to provide private tours to every single person that visits the museum. And I am, so we are typically open 3 days a week, but right now with the pandemic, we've kind of limited it to Saturdays. Every person who books a ticket, they get a tour of the entire space, courtesy of me and my team of docents. So,
So in a way, people come into the space and experience a Palestinian hospitality as
yeah,
almost like you're not going to see a picture of it on the wall. You're actually going to feel it as the welcome that you get.
yeah.
You even service. Do you service tea if we come? Do you service tea and bickies?
No bickies, but we do service tea. We have traditional Palestinian tea with meramir or sage. So it's black tea with sage. It's really strong. I'm not a tea drinker. I prefer to give it to my guests and just leave me out of it. We also sometimes some of our volunteers. I mean, we are a very grassroots effort right now. We've had volunteers bring in snacks like menaish. So menaish are like little thyme or cheese pies,
Yeah.
and they're really delicious.
So
And yeah, we've also brought some other Palestinian desserts as well, like knafe and
Yes.
masawa.
I'm going to ask a hard question here. Maybe I'll throw it to Bashara and
Sure,
maybe
yeah.
Mona and Talib who have a background. When you come to tell the Nakba story, I mean, what you could tell that in so many different ways. So how it's a very difficult and maybe for lots of people controversial. So Bashara, what goes into your head when you say like, all right, we're going to put this out there, but we don't want to start, we're not wanting to contribute to more conflict, but how do you deal with the Nakba as a piece in the museum? And if, for those who don't know, the Nakba is, 1948, it's 300,000 Arab villages in that region are dispossessed. They leave, and the state of Israel is born. So how do you treat the Nakba
I,
as a piece in a museum?
I like to think about it, of course, it's Nakba is very painful experience to any Palestinian. And we it's part of our life, and it's the other thing, it's continuous. I mean, the Palestinian displacement, you have my family, for example, is still struggling today under the Israeli occupation to be displaced, right? So there is always it's a continued thing to be Palestinians, to be under displacement. But I like to look at it is that what are the lessons, or what did we do as Palestinians as a result of the Nakba? And that's the essence of the museum, is that we also the Nakba story is powerful to every Palestinian, but for the museum we would like to show the resilience that came out of the Nakba, right? The people many Palestinians who came to the US, for example, and created a lot of businesses and went into politics and became entrepreneurs as a result of their displacement in 1948, or the Palestinians who went to Lebanon or to Syria, or they stayed there, and being a Palestinian in Palestine is you will have to deal with yourself and to be creative, to
Right.
survive and to thrive in this
Beautiful.
difficult situation under the occupation. Yeah.
Beautiful. Which sets the stage for, I'm thinking another great museum in Washington is the Native American Museum. And I often use it as a teaching example to say that if the Native Americans wanted to build a museum to the Trail of Tears and all the sorry story of how the dispossession of the Native Americans has happened, they could do that without any question. And they have a right to do that. And the whole museum could memorialize that pain and that suffering and that dispossession. But when, I guess for lots of reasons, but they built a museum which said, yes, our Trail of Tears is part of our story, but it doesn't start there, and it certainly doesn't end there. And so I think the Museum of the Palestinian People, originally, I think the idea was maybe it was going to be about the Nakba as the one story that it was told. But I think, Bishara and his advisor says, hang on a second, that doesn't define us. It certainly shapes us, but it does not define us. And we're going to tell the story of what we were as a people before 1948, and we did exist. It wasn't a land without a people. It certainly had a people, and it had a culture, and it had pride. And then 1948, you can't avoid it. But then the third part of the museum takes us into the future and like post-traumatic stress growth, not stress disorder. So tell us about that part of the museum now as we come to the third and final part of our tour today, Mo.
So yeah, as Bishara mentioned, resilience is a big part of our story. The Nakba is a teachable moment. It's something that propels us to act and to move forward as a people and to survive and adapt. I mean, certainly growing up in Lebanon, it was not easy. I'm not gonna lie. And the fact that I'm here in the U.S. is, it's no short of a miracle. I'm not gonna lie. So we really wanted to highlight. So we have stories of resilience. They're part of our video feed, so I'm not going to show them, but we have a story about a village that's been demolished over 100 times only to rebuild itself back up. We of course have the story of the Tent of Nations of Bishara's farm, which is beyond inspiring. I mean, it's hard to keep a dry eye. I'm an easy crier. Ask Paul when you watch it. And then we also have a story of people who survived the Intifada. So for those who don't know, Intifada, there are several Intifada. There were 3 Intifadas, technically. But the Intifada of the 1980s, which saw thousands of Palestinians take to the streets to protest the occupation, to protest the mistreatment that they felt under Israeli occupation after 1967. And so we have a really inspiring story of somebody who was involved in that and who went on to who was involved in throwing stones as a child, who went on to become a music teacher, and now his work is phenomenal. He does a lot of great work at camp in camps. We also feature a lot of Palestinian artists as well, who themselves are refugees or have gone through difficult times. We have Ahmed Hamidat. His story alone, his art is beautiful, but his story is very inspiring as well. So
great.
So we wanted to kind of show those.
So and it's an interactive museum, isn't it, Mo? So you've got videos.
Mm-hmm.
You can listen to the testimonies. It's oral, it's visual, as well as just pictures on a wall. So what about? And then stories of resilience, and then the stories of the diaspora. We saw that chart earlier on. What's that story?
So the Palestinian diaspora is a big part of our culture as a people, because we are Minshirdin, we are all over the place, and we really wanted to capture that. We built this. We created this map in-house to kind of answer that question: where are Palestinians today? We have over 5 million Palestinians in the diaspora, all over the world, and in fact, the surprising thing is that Chile has the second largest diaspora population after Jordan. And I didn't know this, of course, until I joined the museum. I learned so many things about being Palestinian by volunteering. And so, it's an example of how a community has maintained or kept onto its roots despite the odds against it. Of course, we have Palestinian communities here in the United States and in Canada and North America. But this is an interactive map. And Europe, yes, Akid. So we do have, this interactive map. So if you really wanted to get in and learn more about these different communities, please check it out on our website. And of course, I'll be happy to tell you more about it if you do come in. So.
And where in the USA are the hubs of Palestinian life? Can you focus on the USA?
Sure. Detroit, Chicago, and New Jersey. There is a pretty sizable population of Palestinians. Of course, I did not. When I first moved, I moved to Massachusetts. They're not many Palestinians there. But the DMV area, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, there's also a sizable population here as well.
Mo, can you show the Palestinian Americans on making their mark, like the
Yeah,
Palestinian American
yeah.
figures?
Excellent. Thank you for reminding me. We do have a display of a prominent Palestinian Americans and Palestinians too. We really wanted to emphasize that Palestinians are involved in the fabric of American life. We do contribute. We have two members of Congress, members of Congress. We have Rashid Tlaib. We have Justin Amash. DJ Khaled is Palestinian. Prominent intellectuals like Edward Said and prominent artists like Samia Halabi. We wanted to kind of capture and feature these stories as well because they are an inspiration for us Palestinians, us lay Palestinians, if you will. So
Gigi Hadid.
Yeah, the Hadid sisters are also Palestinian as well, and they've been very. Mo Amer he's a Palestinian comedian. Yeah, but that's probably the biggest surprise is when people come to the museum. They're like, really? The Hadid sisters are Palestinian? I'm like, yes, they are. Their father is Muhammad Anwar and Hadid, I think. And, he moved from Jordan, and he's a very famous, prominent architect.
So,
Yeah.
So I want to, I wanted, when we talked before, I wanted you to give us some recipes because I think Palestinian food is such a vital part of the tradition. I know I live with some Palestinian folks here are like family and like they can't get enough of real Palestinian food. But just for change a second, tell me some, maybe Bashara can add to this. When people come to the museum then, like it's been going for 2 years almost now. What are some stories of people who've come to the museum? What is the impact it's had on visitors?
And could you give us some statistics about that also? How many people have
stories? How many people and yeah.
So I mean, in terms of statistic, we have had I think over 6,000 visitors since we've opened. But online, our reach has been much farther, of course, especially since the pandemic. Our virtual programming is really robust, and you're welcome to check out our YouTube channel and our Facebook feed for previous events, including interviews with prominent Palestinian chefs. We recently had, we have an event with Reem Assis, and she is a Palestinian cook. And we also had Layla Haddad, who was featured with Anthony Bourdain on his show, Allah yarhamu. So we if you really want to get more interested in Palestinian cuisine.
So you had a story, Mo, about, because sometimes, Washington's a very political city. And so like putting up a Palestine museum is a brave act in the setting of Middle East politics that plays out in Washington. You had some story that you remind me of. Was it an Israeli soldier or Israeli person who came to the museum and how that played out?
So of course, when I first selected to volunteer, I did the issue of security. I remember I was the volunteer orientation, and I was like, well, is this a safe space for us, given the the controversial nature, the Palestinians, things that Palestinians have to face on a daily basis. And we do get a lot of Jewish visitors. We get a lot of Israeli visitors, and we welcome them with open arms, of course. But we did have, we had somebody come in one day, and he did not, and I asked him, welcome to the museum. What brings you here? He's like, well, I'm a Krav Maga instructor. Krav Maga is an Israeli martial art technique. And he's like, I wanted to learn more about my enemy. And I told him, I'm like, I really hope you don't see the space as your enemy. We want to understand you more, and we want you to understand us. And so one of our docents, it wasn't me, she walked him throughout the museum for an hour, and he, and I asked him afterwards, I'm like, how was it? And he, what were your thoughts? And he responded, he's like, I had no idea. I just had no idea of how beautiful and complex and intertwined your culture is, and it was very inspiring to see that, somebody somebody felt that way.
Wow.
And,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Bashar, I don't know whether you have any stories of
Yeah.
I remember in the opening week, I was there helping out, and this young professional woman came in, you know, like I didn't know who she was or where she. I mean, she must have been coming to a conference, and she was from Chicago. Well, she was in tears. She just said, like, I never knew a place like this existed, and she said, you have no idea. To see my own story here is just it's just too much. She said, I never would have believed it, but somebody is telling my story, and you have no idea how important that is. So I just
there are so many stories like that where we get, for example, we had a woman from Gaza who actually, you know, Gaza is under siege, so people cannot live in Gaza, and she was so proud that she was Zooming or Skyping her family in Gaza and showing them the museum and saying how proud she is to have a space in DC to show their story.
Mm-hmm.
And to show their story, you know, whether they're from the West Bank or Gaza. So there are so many stories, like, you know, I can, you know, there are others, like, you know, being, I'm usually touched by the stories of the Palestinian families who, like, you know, bring their kids or bring their children to the museum, and their kids, they never been to Palestine, or they're not allowed to go to Palestine because of all what's happening. And it's really, you know, like it's to see that it's really touching to see, like, the kids are learning. Basically, the parents are giving a tour with our docents to tell them, hey, this is what's happening, and they would interrupt the docents, and they're so excited to show them part of this heritage, you know, and part of what we can show at the museum.
Wonderful.
And just to one more thing for numbers, we usually get, before the pandemic, we reached out to point to get a maximum of 100 people a week. So we used to get between 50 to 100 people a week. Including like visitors to Washington, D.C., but also we got a lot of school groups, university groups, and, you know, groups from different communities, whether it's companies or nonprofits or churches who are interested to know about Palestine. Yeah.
Excellent.
So I wonder, just before we move on I want to talk a little bit about the food and the dance. Any questions or comments or contributions? Anybody?
Yeah. I would like to, hi, my name is Giso, I'm in Honolulu. I was born in Iran, so I am very familiar with all the happening around in the Middle East region, and of course with Palestine. And I moved to Germany, so it's another in-depth view of the history of this part of region that really was a shift for the world history. I think what I would like to do is to thank you first for initiating this museum, and what you were sharing with parents coming in. My children were born in Germany, yeah. So I always try to keep them in a loop with the Persian culture, and now they are here in the US. So I think with the step that you took with setting up this museum, and people from the same culture coming in, is the validation of the stories that we tell our children, so that they know that is fact, that is real, and there is a history behind it, and to connect a lot better, and really bringing them to a realization that is not just what my dad is telling me or my mom is telling me. That's history that happens, and it has a future as well. So I think that is really, I can only congratulate you. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Giso. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Michael or Yoni or David? Yoni, would you like, from Jerusalem? Welcome, Yoni. Just unmute yourself, Yoni. Can you unmute yourself? There you are.
Well, thank you for the opportunity from the World Federation of Tour Guide Association. It's great to see you again, Paul. I've been in a few of the presentations that you were involved in. My name is Yoni Shapira, and I am the chairman of Israel's Incoming Tour Guide Association. And I'm glad to be here and hear the narrative and hear the story that you have and see this museum, which next time I'll be visiting my daughter in DC, I'll definitely come in and visit you, and we could sit and discuss over the tea some of the issues that I contend with when I guide here. Because one of the things I do, and I did this coming year, is work with our counterparts in Bethlehem and in East Jerusalem, creating dual narrative tours, and including on 21st of February, International Tour Guide Day, we had a group of Christians, Jews, Muslims touring common holy sites on Mount Zion. And each one is giving the narrative, sitting there and discussing the different points of view of the narrative. Obviously, I'm a 9th generation Jerusalemite, so my mother also had a Palestinian passport, my grandfather and so on, and I have them at home. And many of the items that you show on the wall, I have in my personal collections of items, which is quite amazing.
Actually, the one thing I do say to visitors is that, you know, there were Palestinian Arabs and Palestinian Jews, you know,
Yes,
and they all had the same identity card. I always say this. This is a big thing people don't know, you know.
My mother was a Palestinian Jew, and there are still today a lot of Jews, including one of our tour guides that speaks very good Arabic, and he basically said, I am a Palestinian Jew, even today. I do not expect you really to show any of the other side or the narrative that we have, which is a total different narrative as Israelis. Right. But one of the major populations of Palestinians that I think should have a recognition in the museum, and it's really up to you, is what we call Israeli Arabs, but they identify themselves as Israeli Palestinian citizens. And as you know, we just had the elections for the Parliament of Israel. It so happened in the previous elections, the Arab Party, the Palestinian Party, was the 3rd largest in the Israeli parliament, with over 15 or 16 members of the Knesset. Unfortunately, for the last elections, because of political power play within them, they split, so only 7 got in now, this time. And today they were sworn in to the parliament. They have a major role, that 22% of our population, they're integrated. There are issues, there's no doubt, issues that they claim that they need more just recognition by the government, but they are in a prominent position in Israel, in the parliament, in the academia, in the science, in the technology, in the surrounding fabric of our communities. And I think that is an important part of the Palestinian ethos that should show that here are Palestinians that did stay in Palestine, did live and are now following the Nakba under Israeli citizenship. They did get citizenship and full rights. And as such, they have prospered very much like you have in the diaspora and in other places. I think they also deserve that piece of Palestinian heritage.
Wonderful.
I completely agree. I completely agree, Paul.
Make sure you do, when you come to Washington, you let us know. So we'll give you absolutely. I love what you do in Jerusalem. So Talib, you want to say something?
Yes, I want to just congratulate Yanni on his comment. I think the Palestinian Israelis are a very important component of the Palestinian community because they're proven to be very resilient as well. And the fact is that this is the future of most of the Palestinians who are residing now in the West Bank and Gaza. Because I believe completely that there was a history and there was a culture before Israel was born. That's something that Israelis, not Israelis, the Zionists try to deny sometimes, but it's a fact that remains. And this museum is a great idea. It shows the past, the history, where there was culture and there were people, and there was a society before Israel was born. And now there is another one after Israel was born. Now we should have nothing against the Jews at all. Jews are part of the Palestinian component. They're part of the national component. But this is not a national issue anymore. It's a rights issue Do we have rights as human beings to see who we are or not? You mentioned the fact of Native Americans, for example. Are we like the Native Americans? I don't think so. I think the Native Americans have lost most of their identity now in the American society. I was listening to Jennifer Lopez when the inauguration of Joe Biden was on. She was singing the song, "This land is my land, this land, your land from California to the New York Island." And I was thinking, if I was a Native American, how would I feel about that? Now, why is that different from Palestinian? Palestinian is like a South African, in my view, because the Palestinians today are forming a majority of the population. The Zionist scheme will not prevail, that's for sure, because the Zionist scheme can only prevail. They get the land without the people. People are not leaving. And the future generations of Palestinians are even more. None of us was born in 1948, was born in 1949, when everybody before that was dead now. But the younger generation of Palestinians are even more patriotic, more connected to their roots than their fathers and their grandfathers. Look at somebody like Adit Tamimi, for example, a young lady that stood in front of the soldier, Israeli soldier, and resisted him. That's a fact. So my vision of the future is very important. The future is in the Palestinian Israelis. We need to enlarge their population. We need to give them their rights. You cannot live under an apartheid system anymore.
Right.
And this is apartheid now.
Thank you, Talib.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I just say before I
Yes,
continue,
yeah.
two things. One, I would like to, first of all, I said it when I was muted, when I just got on, before I unmuted, I wanted to wish you all a Ramadan Kareem to those Muslims, and
Thank you.
Happy
Shabbat
Easter
Shalom.
to those of you
Shalom
Christians. And
Shabbat
I
Shalom
live in
to you.
Jerusalem, and right here in front of my home, there is a little park. It's called the Park of Peace. And yesterday afternoon, there was a group of 30 young women, all with Red Crescent vests from the Palestinian Red Crescent, like the Red Cross. And we have the Magen David, Red Magen David, Star of David. They're all the help and medical assistance and so on. So they were doing an outdoor training with a lot of games, a lot of places with a big Palestinian flag. It was a pleasure to see them. Well, on the swings right next to them, there was a Jewish ultra-Orthodox family.
Yeah, that's great.
This is the kind of thing that we would like to talk about.
Definitely. We have to talk about the future now.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering and looking at a time. So we're almost at we're just over 3 o'clock now here, our time. So we've probably got another 20 minutes just to have any more conversation and wrap it up. Anybody else who hasn't said anything or asked a question who would like to contribute anything or say anything? We've got David here, Marika. We've got Safitri. Or if Jürgen, you want to say anything, or Michael, anybody else want to contribute or ask a question? Feel free.
Well, it's been a really interesting session, and thank you for bringing this to the World Tourism Network. And it kind of reminds me, specifically here in the United States, it's really those involved in the Palestinian Museum are living what we call the American dream. The American dream is not only about money, it's about bringing cultures together. When you become an American, when you move to this country like I did from Germany, you don't leave your German heritage behind. You're still German, you're still Palestinian, you're still South African, you're still Jordanian. And this is, I think, a wonderful contribution our country is giving to the world in trying to bring so many nationalities and people together. It's not always a perfect solution. Not everyone gets along with everybody, but there is the attempt. And I think you having the Palestinian Museum is a very important attempt because it's such a controversial part of the world where Palestine, where the Palestinian people are living and struggling. And to bring this home and make it also part of the American dream is very important. And thank you for that.
Thank you, Jürgen, for the invitation.
To thank Shara and Paul for that. And
so anybody else would like to say anything? David or America or Michael?
Hi.
Yes. Susan.
Hi, I'm Sue, and I just wanted to mention this is a big deal in the Washington market. I have traveled with hundreds of tour operators around the world. Many people don't realize that there are these dual narratives and conflict resolution tours. And the first one I ever went on was with Mejdi tours to Israel and Palestine. And what I loved the most was we had this amazing Israeli and amazing Palestinian together with us all the time. They were so friendly. They were funny. They would finish each other's sentences. They made all the rest of us, there were 41 of us, I believe. All of us came on the tour with our own preconceived notions, but we knew very little. I mean, I knew nothing about either. I knew nothing. And when we all left, we were able to draw our own conclusions, our own love of both regions. And we had speakers, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. We might have a young woman who was a colonel in the army, the Israeli army, and she would explain to us why she did what she did. And then for lunch, we had a Palestinian rabbi. It was quite interesting. It was very interesting. Every day, all day, we learned so much that we had no idea. And coming from a little, Christian background here in America, you go to an area and you think you know what you're going to see. And they would show us as a busload would come up and they'd say, watch what they say to this busload of Christians, and it was so wrong. It was information that was disproven 20 years before, but they would never hurt their feelings or make them feel bad. They would just tell us this isn't accurate. Then they bring us to another site and tell us the latest, most relevant data, science-driven information. At the end of this trip, every one of us, we had these dinners together. Every one of us had the same impression. It's sad that these two fabulous populations that live right on top of each other can't get along, because they can get along. And it was the best thing they could have ever done to help people understand, not having one opinion or another.
Great.
With cousins.
The Majdi Tour people are friends of ours, and actually some of our alums of our programs that Bashara was on participate in that and help lead it. So it's a wonderful, Siad and those people who run Majdi Tours, it's great. That's a wonderful story. Anybody else would like to share? And David or Marakar or anybody else?
Paul, okay, I think it's very interesting. And Mr. Shapira from Jerusalem, we are very interested. We belong to the World Federation, and I'm very interested to connect with you more closely. We have a lot of guides in Jerusalem and Israel, and so we want to be sure that you are active with us, and hearing your voice today really has brought me to want to know more about your association and your relationship with the Federation, and that we continue our partnership. So I think this has brought us closer together with this story about the Palestinian Museum in Washington. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, anybody else?
We need more of Yannis with us.
David or
more of Yannis.
Do you want to say anything before we move into the final phase of this?
I just have one quick question. Is there any meeting space at the museum where people can, like after hours, have small events?
It's a very good idea.
Yeah, there is a space that we partner with, which is just the bookstore. There is a Middle Eastern bookstore just down, kind of just the next door, and
Okay.
we sometimes host events there.
Yeah.
So we could potentially have an event and then go through the museum privately at night?
Yeah, we can let us know what you're thinking, and we can work that out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean,
If
I think
could say something.
Bashara and his team are ready to accommodate anybody's needs that are reasonable. I mean, we're happy to have anyone come through the place. So anybody else? Mona, did you want to say something?
Real quick, I just wanted to touch base. We're doing this dynamic conversation on a travel platform. just to reiterate the importance of travel, bringing cultures and people together. And we have lost this. Talib, these have been your words. We have lost travel and the bridging of cultures and nationalities together. And we are not going to see this again in 2021. So open dialogue. Susan, you brought a great story, having the two guides coming together and sharing the narrative from their own perspective. So travel has been hit the hardest during the pandemic, and travel will be the last to come back. So, I salute the museum for educating many Americans on the Palestinian people by having it in Washington, but not lose sight, once again, on the importance of traveling, opening up, engaging, learning, and you coming back with your story that you learned on your trip versus hearing the
come to the Holy Land. Come visit us.
Yeah, thank you, Mona. I think, one of the things I want to build on what Talib says around the issue in the Middle East around being about rights and human rights. And in all my work, did a lot of work in Northern Ireland and Ireland between the Protestant community and the Catholic community. Did a lot of work, 10 years of work in South Africa, the Black, the colored, and the white communities there. And then more recently, Israel and Palestine. But one of the things that I think syncs with the travel tourist industry is the work that we do is like everyone has a right to tell their story, and everyone has a right to tell the story in their own way and in their own time. And it doesn't have to be an argument. Israel, Palestine, or the Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland, it's an argument, and it's an argument that escalates into violence. I mean, there were riots in Belfast and Derry on Friday night, as I heard in the news, and thinking, oh my God, I hope we're not going back, and we're not, I'm sure. But I mean, giving people the right to tell their own story in their own way is really a critical role that I think museums play, and the work that we all share in it. It really is not just, travel is not just about travel. I think as Susan said, travel is not just about travel. Travel is about building a community of understanding and tolerance.
Bringing people together.
So anything else before I want to just say that again, Susan's asked the question, but maybe Bashar and Mo can say, like, how do we, what's exciting coming up for the museum? How is the museum coping with COVID shutdown? Is it reopening? And what exhibits can we look forward to? And if people came to what do they do? And if they can sign up for the virtual tour, what do they do? Give us a little bit more to go on as we leave.
Maybe I will share a little bit, and Mo can share some from his point of view on virtual tours. So first of all, we are reopening the museum on May 1st. There is a lot of restrictions that has been lifted in Washington, D.C. as many people are getting vaccinated. So we are opening on May 1st on Saturdays from 12 to 6. And it will be, we are opening with an exhibit on calligraphy. We have an exhibit that introduces Americans to Palestinian cities and Palestinians to Palestinian cities in Palestine and Israel. And it's from an artist he's Palestinian artist who's based in Virginia. And so that's the exhibit that we're going to be open on May 1st. Of course, we will be hosting tours, every tour for every hour from 12 to 6 more. And his team of docents will be hosting these tours every Saturday.
Wonderful. And over to you, Mo. What else would you like to add to that?
So, I mean, beyond the tours, I think Chada pretty much covered the lion's share of it. But, we do have books at the museum if you want to learn more about Palestinian culture. And I was going to recommend some resources if you want to learn a little bit more, like of recent Palestinian issues or Palestinian art. There's a movie out on Netflix called The Hadiyah, or The Gift. The Present. Sorry.
The Present. Yeah.
The Present. Yeah. And it's a contender for the Oscar for Best Short Foreign Film. And there's also, I mean, a recent book, if you want to learn more, we're actually going to have a talk with the author of this book. This is Hala, it probably looks backwards, Hala Alian, and it's called The Arsonist City. And it's a really wonderful novel on the catalogs the saga of a Palestinian refugee family from Lebanon. So, and
we also host virtual tours with Mo, and we are going to continue doing that. If you want to know more about us, please go on our website. It's mpp-dc.org, mpp-dc.org. You can sign up for our email list. We send a lot of virtual things that we're doing and events, as Mo said, the book, and we have cooking class coming up next week. And also the important thing I kept want to mention from the beginning is that we, as tourists, as tour guides, we would like to invite you to organize events and bring your tours to the museum. And perhaps, I mean, I don't know what's your COVID-19 procedures right now, but we would love to have you maybe for a reception later on. Maybe in the fall we can have a small reception and invite you all to see the museum yourself.
For Marrakesh survivors, everyone, Marrakesh met Bashara, and so it would be wonderful if the local tour guides, I'm sure the museum would, as you say, the invitation is there at some date to host all the tour guides who want to come, and we'll serve up some great Middle Eastern food and show you the museum exclusively, so you know that it's there as one of the little attractions that your visitors to Washington D.C. can access.
Contact us, please. Contact the Guild of Professional Tour Guides or me personally, so that we can make an arrangement. What is the capacity of the museum?
So before COVID, we have capacity of 30 people. So we have 30 people capacity. That's the usual capacity of the museum. But with COVID, we usually have from 5 to 10 people.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Any other final comments before? I mean, this has been I know we haven't, with a small group of people, but very invested. And I just think in 2011, I was on the second year of running this New Story leadership program, and we were interviewing in Bethlehem, and I got to meet this young man called Bashara, and I wanted to I'd been to Bethlehem once before, I think, but he took some time out, and he said, I'll show you myself. I'll show you my Bethlehem. And it's like he was a tour guide. Bashara was a graduate of Bethlehem University. But I still vividly remember that, there was no substitute for, this is my Bethlehem. And so the passion and the love and the, every stone said something to him that I wouldn't have had a clue what it meant. So, I mean, I guess years now, 10 years later, who would have known that maybe, Bashara is doing exactly the same thing, but it's in the space of a global city like Washington and offering that to the world. And then on the same trip, I went to Daheisha refugee camp, which is the big camp just outside of Bethlehem, and met this young artist called Ahmed Hamidat. And Ahmed lives in a sort of cinder block house in the Daheisha camp. And he showed me his art studio. Well, his art studio was like the back garage, just concrete. But the art that he had there was just unbelievably beautiful. And so, I mean, years later, we got Ahmed to come out to Washington, and he worked on the Hill with one of the congressmen, and wanted to sponsor his art. So when the museum opened, first of all, it was a roving museum. The first artist in residence for the Museum of the Palestinian People was Ahmed Hamidat. And so I always kind of think, the paintings that I saw in a little garage in a refugee camp outside of Bethlehem, the Daheisha camp, get now their chance. And now his exhibits are in the Palestinian Museum, not only in the museum in Washington, but they're in the museum in Be'ezait University, where he's teaching now at Al-Quds. He's teaching art. I mean, it's just like, there's so much talent that I think goes to waste in a conflict zone, whether it's Ireland or South Africa or Israel or Palestine. I don't know, it's a quote from a movie, isn't it? A life is a horrible thing to waste. A life is a horrible thing to waste. And in a refugee life and everything else, you know, we've got to, this is so important. There's so much treasure there that can ennoble the human spirit. And I think the Palestinian story is just one of those stories, emblematic of the story of gay people and civil rights stories and you know, transgender people. There's migration stories. There's stories need to ennoble us and uplift us. And I do think the Palestinian story does that. So I want to thank Mo. You have the final word, but I want to thank you for the work you did to put this together. It's been wonderful. It's your story and you tell it. But I think I want to invite you, just as you leave, you have a final story for us, maybe, about the rabbi. I know that you told it, it's a very personal story to you, but maybe if you're up to it, just to sort of wrap up and maybe finish with that story, because I think it really touches us, touches our hearts about what the museum is about.
Thank you so much, Paul. You've been a great guide through this presentation. I really appreciate it. It's not so much a story. I mean, like I mentioned before, we welcome people of all backgrounds and faiths. We definitely welcome Jews and Israelis. And we had actually a synagogue group from Bethesda, Maryland, which is a city right outside DC. And they came to visit us on a private tour. And we had an exhibit called Reimagining the Future, which is probably the exhibit that you mentioned, Paul, which featured art by Palestinian artists that kind of seek to capture a bright future. What would Palestinians imagine as a bright future? And they captured this on canvas. And as the people were watching, the head of the group, he was the rabbi of the congregation. Like, the name escapes me now, but he whispered in my ear. He's like, "I want to show you something." And he took me to a painting which had basically a caption that said, you know, this artist seeks to capture an optimistic future, a bright future of Palestine. He's like, this is why we can't have peace. It's because your goals are so lofty, your aspirations are so unrealistic. And I said nothing at the time, but I waited till the movie was over, and I came up to him and I'm like, Zionism and Israel was a dream. It was a miracle. Why can't we dream too? And I think the museum is a realization of this. It is a dream realized for us. And I really hope it continues to chart that path. So Thank you again so much.
Thank you, Mo. Yeah, I mean, the dream has to be imagined before it can be built, and the museum is doing that. So back to you, Marika, and back to you, Jürgen, and thanks again for your attention, everybody. And I hope this video will go online and it'll be available for others to see, like the wonderful work that Jürgen is doing. So there may be other people who'll catch this story later when they watch the replay. But back to you, Marika, and back to you, Jürgen.
Yeah, let me just take the lead here, and I give Marika the last word, if that's okay. And I wanted to thank everyone for being part of our small group today. On live, we had 29,000 people so far watching us, so we're a lot larger group in the background.
Wow.
And it has been a very interesting story for many of us, I think. And I also hope that Mo and at the Palestinian Museum will be joining our group, the World Tourism Network. We'd be happy to welcome you on a complimentary basis if you wanted to join us. We have one member actually in Palestine. It's the owner, Elena Khoury, from the, I probably pronounce it wrong, Taibi Golden Hotel in Ramallah. And it'll be important, I think, to have tourism establishments like this museum to be part of our international group in 127 countries. Anyone else who wants to join us, we encourage you to do this because we're growing our community. Simply go to WTN.travel, and at the same time, if you're a member, you can also be part of an interest group. And we have the tour guide interest group, where Marika is leading this group, where these type of discussions are expanding, and we're going to have a lot more events. So I encourage everyone to join us. Also, I wanted to remind you there is a lot more coming up this month. Tomorrow, we have a very important event, at least for Gisao and for myself, because we're going to be going and talking to the Hawaii Tourism Authority here in Honolulu about the tourism situation here in Hawaii. And I can tell you, I went to Waikiki last weekend and it was booming. I didn't see any difference from what it was like a year or two ago, 2 years
Very
ago.
good.
So we want to see how
Very
this
good.
how this all works. It's all domestic tourism, but domestic tourism is stronger than domestic tourism was in the good times. So that's going to be an interesting story, and especially to see what are the corona numbers. They're still low, and almost everyone is getting vaccinated. I have my second shot tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to this. Also on Friday, we have an event with Dr. Eleanor Garley, our reporter in New York, and she's going to have a glass of sherry. And we'll be interviewing Cesar Saldana. And you should, if you like sherry, if you like a glass of wine, join us. It's part of our Wine Star Travel group. On April 10th, and Marika will tell you a little bit more about it, we're going to watch the cherry blossom in Washington, D.C. It's part of this tour guide group. And then on the 20th of April, we're going to welcome Visit Britain. And we're going to learn about the situation, what is fast changing between now and April 20th, to see how Visit Britain is planning for the future, or how it's operating on April 20th. So join us this. And then finally this month, we're going to Puerto Rico. We're going to talk about agriculture tourism. And that's also an initiative by Dr. Eleanor Garley from New York. So from my end, I wanted to thank everyone for attending. Go to worldtourismnetwork.com to join us. And you can see a copy of this event will be playing probably starting in a few hours back to back on every page on eTurboNews, on Livestream. And then of course we archive it like we do all our events on livestream.travel or on worldexpo.travel. And you can listen to it as many times as you like. And finally, I also wanted to say a special thank you to Dr. Taleb Rifa and Mona Nafa, who've been joining us from Jordan. And it's very important that you were, I think, part of this group. And of course, also Yoni from Jerusalem. So that helped out a lot. And finally, I wanted to recognize what I should have done in the beginning, Professor, and I call her Professor Snow White. She's joining us from Serbia, and she leads our educational group. And we're going to hear a lot more from Snow White in the future. We're planning a number of events. And Mona asked me about some exciting opportunity possibly in Jordan, so we can talk about this privately at another time. Anyways, I wanted to give the very last word to Marika in Washington before we say good evening, good night, aloha from this part of the world.
Okay, thanks again, Jürgen, Paul, and his team. It was a very, very interesting, inspiring, educational conversation today. And we keep up the good work as we move along the year, as we move into maybe a post-COVID world, hopefully, with all the vaccinations we're receiving. And hopefully our stories will get stronger and deeper and really more, really inspiring the world. And I'd like to invite you to come to our world of writing and showing you the gift that keeps on giving, the origin, the roots, the tradition, and celebration of what we call the cherry blossoms. And here to give our team, David, could you give a few words of what we're going to be doing on Saturday? David is part of my team for this broadcast.
Thank you, Maricor. I did enjoy this presentation very much, and it's so important that we see each other as people rather than just the stereotypes that sometimes we tend to do. I really enjoyed this very much. But we're not only going to talk about, like Maricor said, the roots and the origins and the history of the cherry blossoms, but how that transcends into something bigger, into something more almost spiritual, the deeper meaning of the cherry blossoms to us. And that's a large part of our presentation, and I hope you can come and watch it.
Thank you.
Japanese connection as well. Japanese connection.
Yes, we will give you the Japanese connection, the roots, where it began, where it came from. That's why it's the gift that keeps on giving. Gifts of friendship, of peace, of romance, all of that. So come join us, share your story too. We want everybody to get involved. That's the beauty of this broadcast. We are one world and it's getting smaller because of
That's
this.
right.
I
Yeah.
don't know, but listen, thank you, Mo. Thank you, Bashara. Thank you, Yoni and Mona and Taleb for being part of this. You made it extra special. And thank you, Jürgen, for giving us this platform. You're doing amazing work, and I congratulate you and want to support you in any way we can. I've got to go to another meeting, but thanks, everybody. All the best.
Thank you.
One last thing
you,
I
Paul.
forgot to mention, you just go to worldtourismevents.com. That's where you find all the events and you can register. So do this now, register for upcoming events, worldtourismevents.com. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
Aloha.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. Salamat.
Thank you, Jürgen.
Bye.
Thank you, Mo.
Bye.